In the last few years, we've all watched the stock market do some incredible things, right? And let's be honest, a huge chunk of that growth comes down to just 7 companies, the giants of artificial intelligence. Their profits are soaring, investors are throwing money at them like there's no tomorrow, and their stock prices just keep climbing. It's an exciting time, but the more I watch this happen, the more a knot forms in my stomach. Now, don't get me wrong. Rising stock prices are great. This kind of rally can go on for a long time before any real trouble starts. But the problem I see isn't about how high the prices go. It's about a bottleneck. A single point of failure that has the potential to bring all these AI giants to their knees, all at once. And that's what's truly terrifying. Think about it. These 7 stocks now make up more than a third of the entire S&P 500. That is a massive concentration of power and, more importantly, risk. A problem that hits these 7 companies won't just be a small dip in the market. It could trigger a domino effect, a chain reaction that could collapse the whole system like a giant house of cards. We're talking about a level of systemic risk that I believe deserves way more attention than it is getting. So, what is this bottleneck? What's the one thing that connects all these massive companies and makes them so vulnerable? It all comes down to a critical piece of hardware, the very foundation upon which this entire AI revolution is built. Every major AI company, from the biggest to the smallest, relies on a single type of component from one dominant supplier. This extreme dependency creates a choke point. If anything disrupts that supply chain, whether it's a natural disaster, a manufacturing issue, or geopolitical tensions, the entire AI industry could grind to a halt. Imagine what that would do. Development would freeze, services would go down, and the promised future of AI would be put on indefinite hold. The investor confidence that's been driving these stocks sky high would evaporate overnight. The ripple effect would be catastrophic, not just for the tech sector, but for the global economy. This isn't just a hypothetical scenario. It's a ticking time bomb at the heart of the market. It's crucial that we, as investors and observers, understand this hidden risk before it's too late. To really get a grip on the challenge we're facing, let's zoom in on one company in particular, Nvidia. Now, you already know Nvidia has been on an absolute tear these past few years. Why? Because the demand for their AI processors, like the H100 or the newer B200, has been off the charts. They've skyrocketed to become the biggest company in the S&P 500, making up over 7% of the entire index all by themselves. Think about that for a second. We're talking about a company valued at a staggering $4.5 trillion. Investors are betting big on them, too. They've given Nvidia a pay ratio of around 50. In simple terms, that means if Nvidia's performance stayed exactly the same as it is today, it would take 50 years for the company to earn enough money for investors to get their initial investment back. That's a really high valuation, and it screams one thing. Investors aren't just expecting them to keep doing what they're redoing. They're expecting massive growth. And you can see why they think that. The company is expanding at an incredible pace. It feels like every major corporation on the planet needs to get their hands on Nvidia's processors. In fact, if you look at the other big tech giants, pretty much all of them are buying up Nvidia chips. The only major exception is Apple, which decided to go its own way and design its own processors. But that's the exception that proves the rule. The key takeaway here is simple. Everyone wants what Nvidia has. But here's the twist, and it's a crucial one. Nvidia doesn't actually make its own chips. They are a fabless semiconductor company. That means they're the brilliant minds behind the design, the architecture, and the software that makes these processors so powerful. They designed the blueprint for the most advanced AI chips in the world. But when it comes to actually manufacturing them, turning those designs into physical silicon, they hand that job over to someone else. And who is that someone else? Primarily, it's a single company, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, so the world's most valuable company. The engine powering the entire AI revolution, relies almost completely on another company in another country to produce its core product. This relationship is one of the most important and potentially one of the most fragile in the entire global economy. It's a single point of failure that underpins trillions of dollars in value. We'll dive deeper into what that means for all of us in the next video. Here's a little secret that might blow your mind. When you ask someone what Nvidia does, what do you think they'll say? Probably something like, "Oh, they make those computer chips, right?" And honestly, that's what you hear all the time in the news and online. Nvidia is making the processors that are fueling this whole AI revolution. But here's the twist. That's not really true. Nvidia doesn't actually manufacture any chips. So what do? They design them. Think of it like this. Nvidia has brilliant engineers who are like the architects of the chip world. They create the entire blueprint for their GPUs, figuring out every single detail. They design how the data gets processed, how the memory is set up, and how to make it all run without using a ton of power. They even build the software that makes the hardware useful. But when it comes to actually producing the physical chip, they don't do it. Nvidia's real value is in its intellectual property, its brainpower. They create the essential designs, the secret sauce. It's the exact same story with Apple. You hear all the time how Apple is now making its own processors, like the latest A-series chip in the new iPhone or the powerful M-series chip in the newest MacBooks. But in reality, Apple is a designer too. They dream up these incredible chips, but they don't have the factories to build them. So if Nvidia and Apple aren't making these chips, who is? The answer for both of them and many others is a company you might not have even heard of, TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. They are the master builders, the ones with the massive, multi-billion-dollar factories that take those brilliant designs from Apple and Nvidia and turn them into the tiny, powerful processors that run our digital world. So next time you hear about a new chip from your favorite tech company, remember the unsung hero, the manufacturer working behind the scenes to bring it all to life. It's a fascinating part of the tech world that often gets overlooked. Ever heard of a single point of failure? It's a scary concept in engineering, where one breakdown can bring down an entire system. Well, right now, the entire world is facing a massive one. It all comes down to just one company, and this is where a huge potential bottleneck emerges for all of us. Think about the most advanced technology you use. The M-series chips in your MacBook, the A-series powering your iPhone. Now, think bigger. The chips that are the very heart of the AI revolution, Nvidia's A100, the H100, the brand new H200 and B200. All the world's most coveted, most powerful processors are manufactured by one single company. That fact alone represents a substantial risk. If something happens to them, the ripple effects will be enormous. But right now, that risk is amplified. It's on steroids. Why? Because the company we're talking about is TSMC, and that doesn't stand for Tennessee Semiconductor. It stands for Taiwan Semiconductor. Unless you've been living under a rock. You know there's considerable concern that China might try to seize control of Taiwan in the very near future. In fact, U.S. intelligence believes that Chinese President Xi Jinping is preparing his forces for a potential invasion no later than 2027. This isn't just speculation. We're seeing China's military preparations happen in real time. They've been building and testing brand new landing vessels, specifically designed for an operation like this. They're constructing 70 new commercial ferries that can transport troops and armored vehicles, all scheduled for completion by the end of 2026. And just in recent months, they've been conducting large-scale military exercises in the waters all around Taiwan, simulating a blockade. Now, I'm not saying an invasion is definitely going to happen. No one can predict the future with certainty. But I do find it incredibly concerning that the entire AI industry, the technology that is reshaping our world, is supported by this one company. A company that manufactures 80 to 90% of its most advanced chips in Taiwan. And here's the kicker. TSMC itself has publicly acknowledged that relocating its state-of-the-art fabrication plants out of Taiwan would be, and I quote, essentially impossible. The level of expertise, the supply chain, the entire ecosystem is so deeply rooted there that it can't just be picked up and moved somewhere else. So, what does this mean for the future of technology? For the global economy? We have this incredible, world-changing innovation in our eye, but it's all built on a foundation that could crumble under geopolitical pressure. It's a high-stakes gamble, where the chips on the table are not just pieces of silicon, but the very engine of our digital future. We are all, whether we realize it or not, completely dependent on the stability of a single island in the South China Sea. It's a situation that keeps tech executives and world leaders up at night, and frankly, it should probably concern all of us a lot more than it does. What do you think? Is this the biggest risk facing the tech world today? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Okay, that whole situation with TSMC sounds like a pretty big risk, but surely if something happened, companies like Nvidia and Apple could just take their designs somewhere else, right? Just go to another manufacturer? On the surface, that sounds perfectly logical. But the reality is a lot more complicated than most people think. You see, the kinds of chips that Apple and Nvidia are designing, we were talking about the super advanced. 3 and 4 nanometer generations can only be mass-produced by 2 companies on the entire planet, TSMC and Samsung. That's it, just 2. So why is that? Well, without getting too bogged down in the technical weeds, these 3 and 4 nanometer chips are the most advanced processors in the world right now, though they'll soon be overtaken by the 2 nanometer generation. It's a little confusing because the naming used to be about the actual size of the transistors, but now it's more of a marketing term. The core idea, though, is the same. The smaller you can make the transistors, the more you can cram onto a single chip, making it way more powerful and efficient. To give you some perspective on just how small we're talking, a single human hair is about 70,000 nanometers thick. So these transistors are thousands of times smaller than that. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around. To make something that microscopically tiny, you need a level of precision that is just insane. And here is the kicker. There's only one company on Earth that makes the machines capable of doing this. They're called ASML, and they're based in the Netherlands. Each one of these machines, called an EUV lithography machine, costs somewhere between $300 to $400 million a piece, and there are only a few hundred of them in existence. These machines are owned by various chip companies, but the vast majority are owned by, you guessed it, TSMC and Samsung. But here's the real plot twist. Even if you managed to get your hands on one of these $400 million machines, you still couldn't just start pumping out 3 nanometer chips. You'd need the decades of experience, the specialized software, the incredibly complex supply chains, and the institutional knowledge that comes with it all. And when it comes to actually manufacturing these chips at a massive scale, think hundreds of millions for iPhones and graphics, cards only TSMC and Samsung have truly mastered that process. So why not just switch to Samsung? Well, here's the problem. While Samsung can technically make these chips, they've struggled with something called yield. Yield is basically the percentage of good working chips you get from each silicon wafer. If your yield is low, it means you're producing a lot of defective chips, which drives up costs and can cause major delays. Apple actually tried to use Samsung for some of its A-series and M-series chips, but reportedly, Samsung's yields were just too low to meet Apple's massive demand. So Apple went all in with TSMC. Nvidia also relies almost exclusively on TSMC for its high-end GPUs for the same reasons: quality and reliability at scale. This creates a huge bottleneck. It means that the most important technology companies in the world, the ones driving everything from our smartphones to the AI revolution, are overwhelmingly dependent on a single company, TSMC. It's a single point of failure for the entire global tech industry. Building a new cutting-edge chip factory, or fab, is a monumental undertaking. It costs tens of billions of dollars and takes years to build and equip. Even with massive government subsidies like the CHIPS Act in the U.S., it takes a very long time to catch up. TSMC is building a new fab in Arizona, and Samsung is building one in Texas, which is a great step. But these fabs won't be producing the most cutting-edge chips right away, and they'll only represent a small fraction of the company's total output. So the next time you use your iPhone or see news about the latest AI breakthrough, remember the incredible hidden complexity behind it all. It's a fascinating and fragile system, all balanced on the mind-bogglingly tiny transistors made by just a handful of experts. So, why not just give all the orders to Samsung? Well, here's the catch. Samsung, the next most advanced chip manufacturer, still has trouble matching TSMC's quality. Their 4-nanometer processors had huge yield problems, meaning a big portion of their chips came out defective. And let's be real, when you're making a $30,000 GPU or a processor for a brand new iPhone, losing 20% of your production is a massive financial hit. Nvidia found this out the hard way. During the pandemic, they used Samsung's 8-nanometer process for their RTX 30 series GPUs. The yields were so bad that Nvidia ran straight back to TSMC for the next generation. So to put it simply, if something were to happen to TSMC, you can't just switch them out. There's no real backup plan. There isn't some factory in Texas that Nvidia can just rent if things go south in Taiwan. And that's what makes this entire AI boom so incredibly fragile. But wait, you might be thinking, what about the huge push to manufacture chips in the US? And isn't TSMC building a factory right in America? Yes, that's absolutely right. TSMC is building new chip fabs in Arizona. But here's the thing, just because you build the factory, it doesn't mean you can instantly start pumping out the world's most advanced chips. For one, those new Arizona fabs are years behind schedule. The first one was supposed to start making chips this year, in 2024, but now that's been delayed to late this year or even next year. And the second facility, we might not see it operational until 2028. These factories are insanely complex. If you've ever seen videos of them, they're nothing like a car assembly plant. These places look like they're straight out of a sci-fi movie. The air inside is cleaner than an operating room. Workers have to wear full-body protective suits just to prevent a single speck of dust from contaminating anything. Why? Because one tiny particle can ruin an entire wafer of chips worth millions of dollars. We're talking about facilities that cost tens of billions of dollars, need thousands of highly trained workers, and rely on super specialized supply chains for gases, chemicals, and precision machinery that simply don't exist yet on a large scale in the US. That's the first major hurdle. And we haven't even talked about the talent problem. TSMC's engineers in Taiwan have decades of experience working with the most advanced 3 and 4 nanometer technology. But when they tried to bring that operation to Arizona, they found that the local workforce just doesn't have that level of expertise yet. They even had to fly engineers over from Taiwan just to get things up and running. You just can't replace that kind of technical knowledge overnight. And then there's the final problem. Even if these new U.S. facilities or fabs do finally come online, they won't be building Nvidia's top-tier AI chips right away. The plan is for the Arizona plants to manufacture chips on TSMC's 4-nanometer process. Meanwhile, the latest and most in-demand chips, like Apple's A19 and Nvidia's B200, use 3-nanometer technology, and they're quickly moving to 2-nanometer. So it's going to take quite some time before that true state-of-the-art manufacturing is happening at scale in the United States. So yes, there's progress. The U.S. is absolutely investing in chip manufacturing through the CHIPS Act, and companies like Intel, Samsung, and TSMC are all expanding on American soil. But building this up isn't something that can happen in just a couple of years. Building that entire ecosystem, the people, the materials, the suppliers, the precision tools ultimately. It's going to take many, many years, potentially a decade. And that's why when I asked Steve Eisman about this, a man who's pretty good at predicting stock market bubbles, this is what he said. I asked him, do you think the biggest thing we have to watch out for at the moment is the geopolitical situation? His answer was simple. Yes. Okay. Definitely. The reality is there is a massive dependency on Taiwan and TSMC. But what happens if China does invade Taiwan? This is where things get very interesting. Now, of course, we are just speculating at this point, as the truth is, we don't know what would happen. But TSMC has said for years that if China invaded, they wouldn't be able to continue producing chips for the West under Chinese occupation, even if they wanted to. It's just not that simple. As I was saying, their facilities depend on global inputs, high-end machinery, specially designed software from the U.S., and so on. If China attacked, those supply lines would be instantly cut off. So even if TSMC's fabs weren't destroyed, they'd basically be dead in the water. They wouldn't be able to get the parts, the tools, or the support they'd need to keep running. And this is why the U.S. is watching so closely. And it's why America would almost certainly get involved if China invaded Taiwan. In fact, the U.S. has made it very clear that they would rather see TSMC's equipment disabled than let it fall into Chinese control. There are even whispers that Washington has contingency plans to evacuate key Taiwanese engineers or remotely disable the factory tools so that they can't be used by China. It's a high-stakes game with the world's technology on the line. From China's perspective, if they took control of Taiwan, do you really think they'd just keep exporting the world's most advanced chips to American companies? That feels like wishful thinking. I mean, it's highly, highly unlikely. Just think about it for a second. China already controls over 90% of the world's rare earth refining, and they haven't done that by accident. They've done it very intentionally for power and for control. This gives them massive negotiating power and incredible leverage over the rest of the world. They control a critical ingredient in everything from electric vehicles and their batteries to advanced defense equipment. Now, imagine if they also control TSMC. That would be an absolutely huge economic and strategic move, and it would seriously weaken the West. It's really quite incredible when you break it down. They take this one little island just off their coast, and suddenly, the entire Western world is in big, big trouble. The economic fallout would be immediate and severe. All those supply chains we rely on would be thrown into chaos. It's a single point of failure that we've allowed to develop over decades. And that's precisely why I think we, as investors and just as citizens, need to be really careful about this one major choke point in the entire AI economy. It's the bottleneck that could bring everything to a grinding halt. If you remove that one tiny island off the coast of China from the equation, what happens? Well, Nvidia's advanced chip production stops. Apple's custom silicon for iPhones and Macs stops. And then you have to deal with the massive ripple effects, the flow-on consequences for companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Tesla, and Meta, even Google to an extent. And those are just the big headline names. Think about all the smaller companies, all the startups, all the innovation that relies on that steady stream of advanced semiconductors. The entire tech ecosystem would feel the shockwaves. This isn't just about one company or one industry. It's about the very foundation of our modern digital economy. We're talking about a potential technological and economic crisis that would dwarf anything we've seen in recent memory. The markets are currently euphoric about AI, but this is the uncomfortable reality that sits just beneath the surface. It's the geopolitical risk that no one seems to want to price in. And just to be clear, I'm not trying to be a fear-monger here. I'm not predicting the end of the world or some imminent catastrophe. But I do think this is a critical issue that should be discussed and thought about a lot more than the market is currently considering. We're so focused on the upside of AI that we might be ignoring the biggest risk to its very existence. So, I really want to know what you think. Am I crazy for being this concerned? Is this something that keeps you up at night? Or do you think the market has it right? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective on this. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.